Hello everyone. I am Árpád and I will start this presentation about history and games in Hungary. A couple of words about my background. Please, Balint, go ahead for the next. Yeah. So, historical games in Hungary. My background about that is that I'm very interested in games as educational tools, and we organized with my organization the so-called Muzeum Játékmustra or Museum Game Fair, which is an event started in 2019, and we try to organize it in every year, which is very complicated because of the pandemic and many other reasons. But the point is that with this forum, we try to connect game designers and educators from schools, museums, etc., etc. As you can see from its title as well, it is focusing on museums, and on the picture on the right side, you can see that sometimes it's the environment as well. This picture on the right side was made in the Hungarian National Museum. So we tried to connect as many educational games, Hungarian educational games, as it is possible. And what I've seen is the following. Please, Balint. Next slide. Video games. It is a very small industry. As far as I know, the Hungarian video game industry should grow to reach Czech or Polish size. So it can be much better. It is a long journey in front of us, and also it is a very tiny market. So if you want to work with Hungarian history, you should somehow change it or try to find the connection with non-Hungarian people as well. Therefore, most of them are only in Hungarian, and there are very few of them. One of them is Jumur Jack's Ring, which is based on what happened? So it's based on a very popular Hungarian historical novel from the 19th century. And the other one, what I brought, what you can see right now on the right side, is about the Hungarian folk tales. So Behind and Beyond, it is about it is a point-and-click game based on Hungarian folk tales. And it had a Kickstarter campaign, but it wasn't that successful. Hopefully next year we can play it. And the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, so board games. The experience is that we focusing on the glorious times of Hungarian history mainly, and these games are mainly targeting Hungarian players as well. Board games are more and more popular in Hungary, just like everywhere, more or less in the world. What I want to highlight is the KG games. They are focusing on historical board games, and they make it historically as accurate as it is possible. They have a couple of games, about Ottoman era, about medieval times, etc. So this is the game designer's perspective. There are some minor games and projects, but they do not connect, and in general, they, at least according to my experience, they do not going to the international market. Next slide, please. Let's see the educator's perspective. My experience with the museum and school educators, that they are coming from the educational part. Therefore, they try to make education fun. And unfortunately, generally, the result is the following. Please click the button. Balint, yeah. Let's play fill this test. So generally, it's more education than games or gamification. It is from the material perspective and not from the player's perspective. What I think we should learn is how to create games that makes you excited by its word. So it's not like the material, the story, because you have to read it and because you had to learn it, but you learn from the mechanisms, from the story, from the characters of the game. If you play a game, you get many knowledge about its world because it brings you to a different world, and this world should be educative. And the game should be good from the player's perspective, make the players, yeah, I want to play again. Accuracy and authenticity in games is a very different topic. We would like to talk about how to reach it, and let's go to the next slide. How to turn scientific facts into fun and educative game. This is the main main question of our presentation. And in the following minutes, Nandi and Balint, yeah, there is a renovation next to Balint's flat. Therefore, there will be some improvisation to hear us, but we will talk about this, and we have case studies about games designed by or co-designed by ourselves. And yeah, I give the floor to Nandi.
Thank you, Árpád. Thank you. So as you can see, we are not mainly academics. Árpád is, but we are not. That is not basic. We wanted to showcase our game design practice, and we hope that's also going to be something that's interesting to you. And that's the next project that I want to showcase is the one that we were connecting with Arpi. He was the one actually was the creative lead behind this project, and so this is our shared heritage, the Vuchadol culture. Put it in the comments if you know what the Vuchadol culture is, because so again 2 years ago when we started working on this, I had no idea. So this is basically this is going to be a game about the or actually 2 games about the early Bronze Age. It was a project supported by it was a European Union Cultural Heritage Project supported by Interreg, and out of this project 2 games rose out, a very large board game and a theatrical adventure game. So 2 different kind of genres. So again, what I like to talk a little bit about in the upcoming 4 to 5 minutes is, the process of how we created these games, and a little bit about the intricacies and a little bit about about what these games were about. Let's start with jumping in on the process and or goals in terms of creating these games. So we basically wanted to create an experience that brings participants closer to the early Bronze Age, how to make the Bronze Age come alive. I mean, it's a really distant era, it's a really distant world, it's kind of far from our daily life, but how do we make you connected to it? How do we make the participants connected to it? And how do we also, on the same time, do it in a way that it's going to be authentic and it's going to be actually grounded in reality? Not because again, the Bronze Age, we don't know again a whole lot about it. There's a lot of room for interpretation, and it's I mean, this kind of license is great for design, but also it has its challenges. So the main thing about the process is that we had a pretty wide creative team assembled by Árpád. So we had a group of I think among the 8 of us, we had 2 archaeologists, a museum educator, drama education professional, theater director, and of course game designers. So that was basically our team. The format of our process was a subsequent series of 3 residencies, game design residencies that took about a week each, in a period of about across about a bit more than half a year. Part of these residencies were actually in person when we could be together, and then of course the pandemic kicked in. This was 2020, and then some parts of the residencies were online. Again, when we started out with the ideation, it was really important that the professionals, the archaeologists, were present to so again, basically they were involved in the creative process from the get-go. So when our ideation process would go a little bit out, they could be there immediately to kill our darlings, to basically to have us focus on the archaeological finds, the actual stories that were grounded in history. So our first week was probably the most productive, because this was the week when we could actually immerse ourselves into the world of the Bronze Age, and they were and the pictures on the right show you the warehouse of the museum in Pécs, the Honus Museum in Pécs, which holds these Bronze Age finds. And these were basically, the idea was that we would like to have a game that actually showcases these finds, where you can use actual archaeological objects as game elements. The ideation went basically in 2 directions. So we ended up splitting the group into 2 groups, and this is how we ended up creating 2 games. One game was about that became the board game, that basically compassed around the idea of resource management board games like Settlers of Catan, how to make a game that's kind of resembles a Bronze Age version of Settlers of Catan, but also is more authentic and is more that basically presenting about that game. And that game became 2700 BC. So this is the very large board game that I initially mentioned. Essentially, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of mega games. So this is essentially a board game that takes place on multiple boards, so as players are participating in the form that they are building their own village. They have teams, they build their own Bronze Age village, but they can also communicate with the other villages who are building their villages at the other table. So and the entire it's a turn-based game, and the turns are also complemented with a narrative. So each turn has a narration. So, and again, the other thing is that it's important that this was a facilitated game. So it wasn't like a board game where you sit down, you learn the rules, and you play, but you have a game master who runs your experience and explains the rules, and then at the end debriefs it, and that's basically where the learning element will happen. other than the structure of the residencies, the 3 residencies in between, and after them, we had a period of game testing. And some of this is actually shown on the pictures now. So some part of the game testing was actually had to be online, using different online tools like Miro or Zoom to play the game. And then later on, we ended up being back in reality and being able to test it with people. And then the whole goal of these experiences that we wanted to take them to museum festivals and cultural festivals, so people can experience coming to a museum or learning about something that is shown in a museum in a different way. And just a little bit more on how the game looked like, just to give you a little bit of an impression, and what other elements were involved. And yeah, so Árpád, if you want to add a few things on this particular game before we move on to the next one.
No, not at this point.
Yeah, so this was our board game like experience. The other experience that we created was a theatrical adventure game. So that's that team that created this one compassed around the idea of play. So game versus play. In this idea, so this became more a theatrical, more like a role playing style of an experience. And with this one, we designed for more participants and different levels of participation. So it was really lucky that we had a theater director on the team, so we could actually include a cast of actors. So we had 3 levels of participation, and this is what actually makes this game interesting for me, at least. That so it wasn't like an escape room, and it also wasn't like a theater play where you're there as a passive participant or just observing and watching what happens within the game, but you had the chance to be a little bit. So it was an amalgam of genres. So when I'm mentioning the 3 levels of participation, so of course we had the actors who were driving the story. So we have 3 actors, and we had participants. Up to 30 participants could play an experience of what life would have been like in the Bronze Age. And in between these 2, we had 6 roles for players. Intended for role players or people who are more engaged, and they would be arriving an hour before the actual showing of the play, to the actual showing of the theatrical adventure, and they would receive a workshop, which they would get a character, and they would kind of get immersed into the worlds. And so the interplay between the actors and the players helped the other participants on board the entire the entirety of the game. Of course, we used reproduction props, so props that were actually designed by experimental archaeologists that are sometimes used in museum education courses. And it was, again, other than having a narrative, we also wanted to showcase what the archaeologists actually knew about how life was in the Bronze Age. So there were actual hands-on experiences of grinding wheat or going on a hunt or these kind of experiences. And again, Return of the Valley of the Wolf has played also on just like the other one. It was a mobile experience, so we actually set it up in an outdoor setting, and summer festivals as well. So, and again, this is the final few pictures are about that. Yeah, I'm wondering if we have Balint back.
And the other question is if we have time back.
Right.
Well, just go ahead because I have some disturbance in the audio here. So yeah, it's better if you can present.
Okay. Do we still have? So this is how much time do we have? Looking at the organizers.
Well, we still have 7-8 minutes, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly the time. So you have quite a bit of time, so no hurry.
Excellent. Because with that, I'm going to move on to our next project, and that was the yeah. So again, just a few things about us as an organization, and then I'm going to move on to our next project. We are Parallel Worlds Foundation, and or basically our practice is in creating role playing and games and LARPs. And of course, we have we're doing. We're making events also for the Hungarian role-playing community, and we're involved in a lot of, as you already had. So with the previous showcase, we're involved in European corporations and sometimes European Union co-funded corporations. And one of them was, so the one that I'm going to focus on now is FEMA Crisis, which is an EduLARP project that we're currently in the process of closing. So this is the current project that is happening at the moment. Yeah, let's jump into this. Again, this is a project that is funded by the Erasmus Plus funds, and we're leading as an organization along with three other NGOs. So again, we are moving away from the Bronze Age and we're going into the modern times again. And so this is going to be a project about the short-lived independence of the city of Fiume, which is in today's Croatia. And the short-lived independence took place after World War I. So after the armistice, after the end of World War I, the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapses, and Fiume, among other things, it becomes for about 4 years or so an independent city-state. So again, it was a pretty chaotic period. And it had a kind of a transnational, kind of a multi-ethnic background. Fiume was the port city of the Hungarian kingdom, but it was also a Croatian city, and it was a heavily Italianized Croatian city. So it had three ethnic groups that were important to its life. So this is why we thought that we would like to involve a Croatian and an Italian organization, so we could have a kind of a balanced view of this time period. And so we wanted to use this time period. Again, this is a very vibrant, very tumultuous time period. In a matter of a couple of years, if in Fiume, almost everything happens that will happen in the 20th century. So very chaotic, very interesting time period. And it also, we wanted, just like with the Bronze Age project, we wanted to connect it to contemporary times. How does this period speak to modern times in terms of political radicalization and in terms of propaganda? So this was the idea. How are we going to use the setting, sort of this world of the post-World War I Fiume, to think about contemporary times. So what was the goal here? We wanted to create informal, immersive adult education tools that use the context of this short-lived experience of independence after World War I to teach about political radicalization, populism, and propaganda. So we're right now in the process of publishing 3 educational LARP scenarios. So these scenarios were created throughout the course of this project, yeah, so that's going to be the digital manual at the end. So our process, we took some lessons from the Buchadol project. So it also had a residency, but we wanted to have more historical knowledge and basic more preparation before we jump into the creation process. So we started out with online historical lectures involving 3 researchers from all countries, so from Hungary, from Croatia, and from Italy. And so this was in January of 2020. We had these 3 sessions, and the 4th one when we had all of the researchers actually hosting a panel about this time period and answering more questions from the audience. Then the 2nd session was still also an online session when we focused on different aspects of historical game design. And finally, in May, we convened in Rijeka in Croatia for a week, where we worked basically had 3 teams using different backgrounds from theater to LARP to game design to history and education. So so that was basically the format. 3 games were created using this format, and I'm going to go through all 3 of them. The first one is called Borders, which is a black box LARP. So this uses a lot from theater and theatrical experiences. So this is centered around the experience of borders and boundaries, also boundaries between states, but boundaries between people and boundaries within yourself. So that we are basically exploring the concept of barriers, and the game has an audio track, kind of an interesting audio experience. Yeah, again. So this was one of the games. Then the second one is Silent Night, Horrible Night, which is a chamber LARP, in which 8 players are playing a Christmas meeting, a Christmas gathering of a Croatian and Italian kind of mixed family during the turmoil at the end of World War I. And
sorry to interrupt, Nandor. We're running a little bit out of time, so if you could please conclude
Sure.
the panel, it would be great. Thank you.
Sure thing. I have one more game just to mention. We had a medium scale LARP, a little bit more players, which is called City of Lies. It's about authoritarian regimes and propaganda. So that's basically these were the 3 games that were created. And again, the whole goal of our workshops and or practices how to bring participants, players into an authentic historical world, historical context, and fascinate them. So yeah, this is it. Thank you very much.